The marble flooring felt soothing against his little bare feet. Sai didn't recall the last time he had worn shoes. It hadn't been too long ago, but long enough that his feet hurt and bled. Parts of his soles were embedded with broken glass or rocks, things he tried to remove, but had failed to. He was small for his age of 10, but was considered smart, even more so resourceful. His grandmother swore it was why he was spared, so he could find a way. Every morning, Sai looked at the high-rise luxury apartment building. It was visible on the skyline. He saw it when he went to the market and played with his friends. It rose high, a beacon that Sai followed that day because he knew that building had what he needed. Water that was clean and perhaps some food. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. Typically, he would have been taken by authorities for even crossing the threshold of the entrance, but that didn't matter now. Everyone was dead. Dead, or dying. At least it seemed that way to Sai. In his neighborhood, very few were left. Their bodies lined the streets, becoming a decaying feast for stray animals. The stench was horrendous, and the sound of buzzing flies was steady until nightfall. Then it was quiet. Too quiet. The sickness had come only a few weeks earlier. No one in his village had received word of it. Illnesses were commonplace there. Even death. This one was different, though. There was no vomiting or diarrhea, no cough, just a fever. The body grew so hot, shivered as it tried to fight the disease, and then succumbed. Sometimes it took days. More times than not, it was over fast. In the height of the pandemic, Sai would cover his ears and rock back and forth, trying not to hear the moans of the sick, the cries of mothers whose children had died. Then, slowly, the noise was replaced with barking dogs, insects, and the occasional moan of the few dying that remained. No more cries of babies carrying through the streets. The weak went first. Sai's father was the first to die, then his mother, grandmother, and finally his aunt. Now, all he had left was his little brother Arav, and he too was sick. Arav was curled in a ball near his mother's dead body, trying to find a soothing that wasn't there. Weeping in his illness in their 2-room home, a place his grandfather had built in his youth. One of the nicer homes with wooden and brick walls with a corrugated metal roof. No plumbing, though. No one really had plumbing. They had to go out for water from one of the wells or when the city turned on the pipe. The city had stopped doing that. His brother needed water. Water to drink, to wipe the sores around his mouth. The well water near their home was thick and foul. It grew worse by the day. Rodents and other things floated in there. Arav needed clean water. Maybe if he was able to get him some that was fresh, he would get better. That was when Sai decided to go elsewhere to find it. What would it hurt? He looked to the buildings that touched the clouds. Sai prepared for a long walk. He carried 2 large sacks that his mother had lugged food in, old sacks his father had from when he delivered newspapers, back in the time when people read them instead of their phones. He didn't know what to expect outside his village. For all he knew, everyone else was fine. A mile away, they had good doctors with medical care, money for medicine, and fresh water that came from pipes and in bottles. There was a possibility it would be a waste of time. He'd be shunned, pushed away, a means of possible infection. People in fancy clothes would look at him strange, tell him to leave, and he'd be arrested. Then what would become of his little brother? He'd die alone. No one to hear him cry. Sai had to try. Not far from his home, he found a bike. It rested against the side of a house. No one was around, so he took it. It would be a means to get there faster. Without shoes, the pedals hurt his feet at first. Then he ignored the pain and kept moving. It didn't take long for Sai to learn that money didn't buy immunity. No amount of riches or doctors or medicine kept them safe from the fever. The fever showed no prejudice. There were no cars driving by, no one on the streets. It was the same with the rich as it was with the poor. The only difference was that no bodies lined the roads, no massive amounts of flies and rats.